All right. So relationships, right? What did they argue about? Nothing. Nothing. There was nothing. I mean, maybe there was something theoretically that started the argument. But they had a full-blown argument, right? Which involved her feelings and everything without actually having anything that they were arguing about. And that's what the theme of today is going to be, is that it's not what you argue about that's as important as how you're arguing about it. Okay, so this is what psychologists call content versus process. The content of the argument is not nearly as important as the process of arguing. So it doesn't matter if you are arguing about your mother-in-law. It doesn't matter if you're arguing about the fact that the other person won't put their dirty laundry in the basket. They put it next to the basket. It doesn't matter if you're arguing about an affair. It's how you're arguing about it that determines whether you build a closer relationship or you destroy your relationship. Okay? So the topic does not matter. How you do it matters. As a matter of fact, John Gottman has found that only 20% of problems are changeable, or solvable as he calls it. Which means 80% of problems are not solvable. Nobody's married in here yet, right? Okay, good. So, you guys have time. You're not like my college students, who some of them have already screwed up their lives. Remember, when you get married, you are choosing the set of problems you want to deal with for the rest of your life. Okay? Everybody has problems. We all have issues. Some problems are worse than others, but they're not going to change after you get married. Remember that. A lot of us fool ourselves into believing this person will get better after we get married. I dated someone who chewed with his mouth open. Drove me freaking crazy. Crazy. And he was a great guy, like a lot of good, positive things about him, but I could not stand that. And I tried and tried and tried. I'm like, just shut your mouth. Like, how hard is this to do? It did not matter what I did, it didn't change. Okay? So that was in the 20, 30, 80% category. It was not going to change. His issues with his mama, definitely not going to change. Okay? Now, there are some things, like I don't particularly care for bad language and everything, and he was Irish, and all the Irish are infamous for their bad language. And he cleaned up his dirty mouth, for my sake, which I appreciated. But that was one in a whole list of issues. And anybody you end up marrying is going to have a whole list of issues, and 80% of them are not going to change. So are those issues the ones you want to live with for the rest of your life? That's what you have to ask yourself. Okay? And the way John Gottman found this out is he interviewed couples, lots and lots of couples, and he listened to them argue. So he'd set up a laboratory and he'd say, okay, go in and just discuss an issue you've been having recently. That's all he told me. And of course, it easily turns into a full-blown argument between couples. And then he'd have them come in years later, and he'd do the experiment again, and he found that 80% of the time they were arguing about the same exact thing. Even a decade, 20 years, 30 years later, arguing about the same exact stuff. All right, so don't fool yourself into believing that after marriage this person will change. As a matter of fact, they're on their best behavior before marriage. All right, so imagine it'll probably get a little bit worse after marriage. Okay, keep that in mind. So John Gottman is, we affectionately call him the love guru. He specializes in studying relationships. He has what he calls the Love Lab up at his university in Washington. And it's an apartment where couples can come and stay for the weekend, and there's cameras all over the place, except the bathroom and the bedroom. And he videotapes their interaction and then makes poor, unfortunate students like you watch hours and hours and hours of footage and mark and code every single interaction. So they can look and see how many times does a couple have a fight? How many times does a couple make a bid for attention? And then what does the other member of the couple do? Do they, this is what Gottman called it, they have some options. They can turn towards, bid. Okay? These are bid responses. Okay? So I try to get your attention. Maybe I just smile at you as you walk in the door. I say, hey, how's it going? Or I might say a big one, we need to talk. Those are all bids. Laughing at the comic strips is a bid for attention. A very small one, but still a bid for attention. So the correct thing to do is when somebody makes a bid for your attention, you with a positive attitude turn towards them and go, what's so funny? Or hey, nice to see you too. Or you just smile back as you walk past. Okay? Simple. Doesn't have to be a big deal. You can turn away. So the person laughs while reading the comic strips and you don't say anything. You're not mean about it, you just don't pay attention. Person walks into the house and you're watching TV. Imagine one of your parents or a sibling walks into the house while you're watching TV. What do? You say hi. What was that? Ask how their day was. Those are turning towards. Does anybody just keep watching TV and not say anything?
Yes.
Do you? Okay? That is a turning away. That's an ignoring. Okay? Anything below turning towards is hurting the relationship. Keep that in mind. In my family, you better turn that TV off and turn around and say, hey, how's it going? How was your day? Or my mom would beat your butt. That's just the rule. That was the rule in my household. Okay, there's no ignoring. But even worse is what Gottman called turning against. So they walk into the house after a long day at work, you're watching TV, and you go, could you be a little quieter? I'm watching a show. Right? Rude. Or they're reading the comics and they laugh, and you go, hey, I'm trying to concentrate. Or even worse, I hate when you laugh out loud when you're reading the comics. That was actually on one of the videos that John Gottman showed of his couples. Okay? That couple has a high likelihood of divorce. So the more turning against, the higher your likelihood of divorce. But turning away also predicts divorce as well. Okay. So Gottman said, I believe it was in happily married couples, and that's couples that don't divorce but are also happily married, they respond to minimum 80% of the bids with turning towards. Minimum.
That's a lot of attention you have to pay.
It's a lot of attention you have to pay. Yep. Marriage is hard work. It's worth it. Married people are happier. Married people are healthier. They live longer. They have more sex. They make more money. There's a lot of benefits. You get tax breaks as well, which is nice when you start paying taxes. So there's a lot of benefits to marriage, but you have to put in the work. All right, so let's talk about marriage in this country. Marriage has changed significantly since World War II. Okay, prior to World War II, we had a very low divorce rate, and after World War II, the divorce rate started to skyrocket until the 80s, and it has somewhat slowed down and decreased, but it's still really high. So why did that happen? What was the big deal about World War II with couples? Yeah.
Didn't women also start being like more independent?
Yes. Women had to work. Okay? Industrialization. Men went off to war. At least, minimum estimate is 60 million people died in World War II alone. That's not even including World War I. 60 million people around the world. That's insane. And a lot were from our country. And were they men or women mostly? Men. Okay? There's women who died too, but it was mostly men. So how does that affect marriage in this country? Got a lot of single mothers, a lot of widows. And that's going to dramatically affect, you've got kids now, you're a widow, you better get your butt out working. Who's going to take care of you? You didn't have welfare back then. There's churches, places you could go beg for some help, charities, but not welfare. This is part of the reason why we created welfare in this country, was to take care of all of these war survivors. And then, of course, all those men are going to work, so who's going to be at home making the bombs and the ammunition and the guns and so on? Rosie the Riveters. Okay? It was the women who left the home and went into the workplace to create everything the guys needed for warfare. So we had this change in technology so that women could make an airplane. Okay? We had tools. It wasn't all based on muscle anymore like things used to be. And then the economy required that women go into the workplace, which means shifting gender roles, right? Now it's not, woman isn't the little wife that stays at home taking care of babies. She's making her own money. Also, because women went into the workplace, now the interesting thing back then was if you were a boss and you were paying somebody to work for you, you paid them a family wage. So the man is in there, he's got kids, you pay him enough to support his family. That's how it used to work. So when the wife started coming into work, the boss goes, well, I'm paying you guys what you need for your family, so he split it in half. So now you made half of the income that you used to make because you're both working, and I'm paying you to support your family. I'm not paying you. I'm paying a family wage, not an individual wage. But now you had single moms or widows who were working, and now they're also making half the income. Or you tried to have a stay-at-home wife, and you're just working, but now you're making half the income you were making before. So now you have to both work to support your family. It's very difficult, even today, it's very difficult for one member of the couple to stay home and take care of the kids while the other one works. You're going to make a lot of sacrifices. It was easy before because your boss paid you a family wage. Okay. Then we also have other technologies. Transportation, it's easier to get around. Birth control, you can delay having babies in order to work and have a career. So all of this is leading to a lot of gender role shifts, and the couple has to figure out how to make it work. Life is a lot easier when you know exactly what you're supposed to be doing in life. How many of you kind of stress about what you're going to do after high school and college? Right? Didn't used to be that way. Your dad was a carpenter, you became a carpenter. And all you ladies would have just married somebody and had babies, and that was that. Okay? If you do something with your spare time, that's fine, but you had somebody to support you. Okay? So, we have the same issue in marriage. What is my job as a wife? And what is my job as a husband? Now that women are working and able to do things, and technology gives them the strength that muscle used to provide. Okay? It makes things confusing, makes it more difficult, makes for more arguments. For instance, women do roughly 80% of the housework and childcare, even if they are working an equal amount of time as their husband. Right? That sucks. So what's currently going on with marriage? Divorce rate has increased dramatically until the 1980s when it has slowed down. It's still too high, but it's slowed down and it's dropped since then. 50 to 67% of first marriages end in divorce, which is awful. Absolutely awful. Now, of course, this is a general statistic for the entire population. If you look at particular cultures, God bless you, people with arranged marriages are way less likely to divorce. There's a teacher in the biology department, Dr. Jalota, and he had an arranged marriage. He's from India, and he's very happy with it. You go to the campus, you can ask him about it, and he's happy to tell you how wonderful it is. And they will probably never divorce because it's not how their culture works. People who are religious are less likely to divorce. Okay. People with more money are less likely to divorce. People who are more intelligent are less likely to divorce. So there are some protective factors. 50 to 67%, depending on the research study, is the entire population. Second marriage is even worse. Add on another 10% to that. So don't divorce. Because if you think your next marriage is going to be better, it ain't. Okay? You're going to go into the next marriage with the same problems, marrying the same person, metaphorically, but with all the baggage from the first marriage on top of it. Okay? So make your first marriage work. And the average duration of a marriage nowadays is 7 years. That's very sad. Okay? Especially considering that people who are divorced are the least happy people on the planet. Well, maybe not on the planet, but of all the marital statuses, they're the least happy. You're better off if your spouse dies. You're happier with a dead spouse than a divorced spouse. Yeah. Well, and consider it. Like, it's very sad when your spouse dies. You loved him or her. You know, whatever, it's done, you grieve, you move on. The divorced spouse is there torturing you for the rest of your life, right? You see the posts on Facebook of him and his new, hottie half your age. right? It's much more painful to get a divorce. So just murder. Okay. More marriages now end in divorce than death, and this has been the case since the 70s. And again, it would be better the other way around. And of course, this means that I have a job as a couples therapist. Okay, couples therapy has gone from, in 1972, 1,000 licensed marital therapists to over 50,000 today, because people are having such issues with their marriages. Heading off already? Yeah. Did you have to get somebody to give you notes? Okay, awesome. All right, so half of couples report a significant improvement from marital therapy, compared to over 75% in individual therapy. So individual therapy is much more effective than marital therapy. And a third of these couples will still have problems later on. Now, what's causing this is marital therapy originally was just based on ideas. I think this is how a good marriage works, so this is how I'm going to teach my clients how to do their marriage. It wasn't based on research. And originally, marital therapy actually increased your chances of divorce instead of decreasing it. So you were better off not going to a therapist to work on your marriage. Nowadays, we have a few research-based methods of therapy, such as Gottman's work. Gottman is totally based on research. It's not his personal ideas. He did research, figured out what the patterns were with happily married couples, what the patterns were with divorced couples, and then built a style of therapy based on that research. So his method of therapy has a very good success rate. So you have to be really careful if you go to couples therapists and find out what type of therapy they actually do, and is it based on research. Okay. Now, when you select a partner, what helps? Number one, not living together prior to marriage. Now, common sense sounds reasonable that you guys should live together before you get married. See if you can handle living with this person. Do you like it? Do they have habits that drive you crazy? Are they good in bed? That sounds logical, but it's not how it works. People who cohabitate, who live together before marriage, have a 50% higher chance of divorcing than people who don't. Right? That's a lot. Basically, you've doubled your odds of divorcing. Also, you are going to have better sex life if you're married and if you don't cohabitate prior to marriage. People who live together before marriage have a worse sex life. Interesting, huh? The theory is that there's a certain type of mindset that goes along with cohabitation. If you are 100% committed to this person, you know this is the person for you, you are determined to never get a divorce, then you're willing to risk marriage. But if you live together, the mindset that goes along with that is, I could walk away whenever I want to. There is an escape, and I'm willing to take it if you push me far enough. Is that what you want your relationship with another person to be based on? Right? So then there's an underlying anxiety in that situation where you know that other person could leave you at any moment. You know that other person is not 100% committed to you, or they would have married you. I see this all the time with my family's business. You know, we have the wedding venue, and with pregnancy, one of the things that research has found is that if you're stressed out, you have a really hard time getting pregnant. Stress is terrible for pregnancy. As a matter of fact, I had a friend who couldn't get pregnant for like a decade, and they decided to adopt. And as soon as they adopted, instead of trying to get pregnant again, she got pregnant. Okay. Because her stress levels dropped. She wasn't freaking out anymore about having a baby, and pregnant. Now, we've only been running this wedding venue since January, so it's a brand new business. And since then, we have had 4 cohabitating couples who, within a month after booking, are pregnant. You think they're not stressed out about their situation? They may say, oh, we're totally fine, there's nothing wrong with living together, this is a good thing, but their body is saying otherwise. Okay? She is flipping out. If he's not, she certainly is flipping out with stress over their situation. And once he finally agrees, okay, we put down a deposit on a wedding, I'm going to marry you, her body goes, oh, and her reproductive system goes, yeah. Okay? And she's pregnant. 4 so far. She's got some marriage baby juju going on. Okay. All right, so living together prior to marriage is not a good idea if you want to have a successful marriage. Other things that lower the divorce rate. Your first marriage. Make it work. Okay? Don't give up on it. Make it work, because your chances of success after that, terrible. Being educated, college and above, lowers your chance of divorce. You're more likely to be able to problem solve. You're more likely to have resources that you can reach out to. You're more likely to buy a self-help book or see a therapist. Married in your 20s or 30s, not your teens. Specifically, it's ages 24 to 35 have the best success rates. Before 24 and after 35, your chance of divorce goes up. Why over 35, do you think?
Because if you're like past your prime.
You're past your prime, what does that mean?
I mean, like, first of all, physically, you don't like reproduce or not as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they're probably also gonna, it might be like a tax thing too, I don't know how that works, but they probably are gonna like take more from you the older you get.
Yeah, I don't think it does work that way with age, but do you have an idea?
Probably because they're already starting to get settled and they already.
That's my theory. Yeah, that's my theory, that you're set in your ways. So, like, I'm 36, I'm not married. So if I got married, I'd be like, you can have your own room. Like, that's my closet. That's my bathroom. I have a spot for everything. I don't know what you're going to do about it. It would be, I'd have to, like, you'd have to compromise, and I'm used to living on my own. I'm used to doing my own thing. When you get married at, like, 25, you aren't set in your ways. You don't have a method of doing things. Okay, so it's easier to be flexible and work with the other person. Again, not cohabitating prior to marriage. The more people you live with prior to marriage and the more people you have sex with prior to marriage is associated with higher divorce rates. Okay? Virgins who get married have the best chance of a successful marriage. I mean, one of the reasons maybe you don't have anybody to compare the person to. Okay? There's probably some good things to that. Religious convictions, like I said, one of the reasons is because a lot of religions are anti-divorce. So that helps. If your culture or your religion says divorce is a bad thing, you're much less likely to do it. A big wedding. I try to convince our brides of this. Have a big wedding. Spend money on it. That is more likely to lead to a successful marriage. Let me tell you, divorce is a lot more expensive than your wedding is going to be. Okay? The average divorce, I think, is $60,000 in California. That's
Why?
the average divorce, because they're fighting over stuff. I mean, you could get online and do an internet divorce for $200, but most people aren't going to do that because you're angry at each other. And then you add kids to the mix, and now the average is going to go way higher, $100,000 easy, okay? Depending on how old the kids are. And now you've got, maybe 18 years of fighting over custody with this other person. That's expensive, really expensive. So spend money on the big wedding, because it's not spending money. It's the fact that you're saying, I'm so excited about this marriage that I'm willing to spend money. I'm willing to work hard to make this awesome. And we also know in psychology that a ritual is very important to the human mind. Coming of age ritual, graduating from high school or college. These are all important things. So we need ceremony, we need tradition, we need rituals for the human psychology to work effectively. Okay? Unless you make a big deal out of something, it isn't a big deal. Okay? So again, it's not the money so much as the fact that you're saying, this is so important to me, I'm willing to make a big deal out of it. So if somebody's proposed to you and you go to a wedding venue and he's like, I really don't want to spend more than $500, $2,000, $10,000, you may want to reconsider, is this really somebody you want to marry? Now, of course, there's exceptions to that, but it is something that you need to think about. Another thing is, do your siblings approve of this person? Not your parents, your siblings. If your sister hates his guts, don't marry the guy. Your brother thinks she's an idiot, and you're making a mistake, don't marry her. Huge predictor of divorce if your siblings don't like the person. Okay? Listen to somebody wise. I made a commitment when I was younger. I will not marry somebody unless the important people in my life approve of the person. So no matter how much I am in love with the person, I'm not going to marry them unless I can convince my sisters and my mom. Those are the most important people to me, and I respect their opinion. If they say, yes, absolutely marry him, then I'll marry him. But I don't care how much I want to marry him. If they say, you're making a mistake, I will not marry him. But I think it's important to have sort of that checks and balances in your life. Because you can get so caught up, emotionally, and you've got the chemicals and the hormones and all that stuff. You can make a mistake. All right, let's see. One other thing is the more siblings you have, up to 7, the lower your chance of divorce. So each sibling up to 7, I think, drops at roughly 10% chance of getting a divorce. Why do you think that is?
More chances. Probably learn how to solve problems with all of them.
Okay, siblings drive you crazy. Can I get an amen? Okay.
Amen.
So you have to learn how to get along with really annoying people. That's what siblings do to you. And that's what your marriage is going to be too. That person's going to annoy you at least on occasion, and you have to learn how to get along with that person. If you can get along with somebody that annoys you, you can easily have a successful marriage.
Yeah, I was gonna say because like for example, I don't even like use it for like this, but my mom and dad, like my dad wants to introduce everyone to my uncles, my aunts, and my mom is like she just wants to stay at home. So I was really like you feel unstable. And I'm assuming that's probably why. Because I'm personally like fine with being my uncles and aunts, but she just like wants to stay in her room because she's like insecure about it.
And their marriage is unstable?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, there could be issues with personality fit, could also be, not getting along with the family. I mean, there's a lot of issues that could come into that. But if she had the people skills to interact with the rest of the family appropriately, it would strengthen the marriage. So it's important. That skill to get along with other people is really important in relationships. Yeah, absolutely. All right, any questions about that? Make sense? Okay. Okay, so let's get back to Gottman's stuff. Gottman said there are 3 styles of marriage. There are validators, volatiles, and avoidants. And this is your style of communication. So the validator, sort of like the therapist of the bunch. When you're in an argument, they want to hear what you have to say. They want to make sure you feel like they understand you, they get what you're saying, they see your point. Now, I may still totally disagree with you, but I get what you're saying. I can see where you're coming from. I think you're wrong, potentially, but I respect what you're saying. That's the validator. The volatile person, they want to express their opinion first, and they want to fight it out, and they don't really care what your opinion is. They want to have an argument, and they want to duke it out. You give me your opinion, I'll give you my opinion, and we'll see who wins. Okay. This tends to be a very passionate marriage. Think about like an Italian couple that's throwing dishes at each other's head. Okay. So there's a lot of yelling, a lot of emotional intensity, a lot of expressing of personal opinions, and not a lot of validating of the other person's opinions. It's a battle, an emotional battle. The avoidant is the exact opposite. It's not a big deal. Why are we even arguing about this? We're a team, we get along, it's fine. Let's just brush it under the rug, not deal with it. It's okay. I really don't want to have an argument over this. What does the laundry matter? Just don't even worry about it. It's a sock on the floor. It's not a big deal. The volatiles are screaming at each other, throwing plates at each other over the sock, and the police are called. And the validator's like, tell me how you feel about that sock on the floor. Why is it that you can never get your sock into the laundry basket?
That's
Drives me crazy. I'm upset about it, but I want to hear what you have to say about it. What do you think is a solution to this problem? Okay? And then they might express their anger. And it's not that all 3 of these don't get angry. The avoider gets angry, the validator gets angry, but this couple is going to get angry the fastest, second fastest, third fastest. Okay? Which couple do you think has the highest chance of success? The validator. Okay? Validator has the highest chance of success. But tiny bit higher. Tiny bit higher. As a matter of fact, for years, Gottman said there was no difference between the 3. And he's just been doing some extra research in the past couple years and said the validator has a bit of an edge. Okay. So it's a little bit better, but these 2 can have perfectly successful relationships. Okay? It doesn't really predict divorce. Smidgen less chance with these 2, but it's not big. It's not that big of a deal. Okay, so it's interesting. However, here's the trick. You better be a validator with a validator, and a volatile with a volatile, and an avoidant with an avoidant. Because if you're mismatched, now you're screwed. Okay? Now you're in big trouble. Imagine, here would be the worst combination. A volatile marries an avoider. Can you imagine that? The chaos? How is the avoider going to feel? Attacked. Okay? They might even feel like the volatile is crazy. What is wrong with you? You're bipolar. I hear guys say that all the time. She's bipolar. No, you probably just pissed her off and you don't know why. Okay? So, but she's very emotional. She's overly emotional. She's dramatic. Or he. Okay? Could be boy or girl on any of these. Those two. I don't know how they've made it work. He is a total avoider. He doesn't understand why anybody would get upset about anything. What is the big deal? He gets overwhelmed with intensity, intense emotions, and she enjoys fighting. She wants a good fight. She's like, get it out there. Tell me what you think. And I'll let you have it as strongly as I want to. But to give it back to me, that's totally cool too. And she married someone who is such an avoider. He cannot handle it. Curls into a little fetal position and cries. I'll have to take that off the video. But so how have they made it work? She had to become less volatile. It's the only way to do it. Avoiders cannot handle it. They have sensitive nervous systems. They get overwhelmed. Their blood pressure skyrockets. They cannot do it. She had to calm herself down. She had to talk quietly. And once she did that, she kind of, I told her, make sure anytime he says anything that is critical or argumentative or anything, you have to just turn into a nicety. You're the calmest, most accepting person in the world. You think it's wonderful that he expressed his opinion. And then he'll feel a little bit safe coming out of his little turtle shell. Okay? Sticking his head off. Because the problem is, every time he sticks his head off, now she chops it off. And now he's like, I'm not coming out of that shell. Okay? So now, with a lot of coaching, he's become a bit more outgoing. So he's made an effort, and he's even apologized and said, I should be expressing my opinion, and I should just be willing to basically take the hit and stand up and do the right thing. But he was not willing to do that until she changed. So the most emotionally intense person just has to make the change first, because the other person has a really hard time handling it. Their physiology is different. Their nervous system is more sensitive to those emotions. Okay? Now, how does a volatile person feel in this relationship?
Ignored.
Ignored. Why aren't you interacting with me? Why aren't you arguing with me? Do you care about me? Why are you so cold to me? And the person's like, I'm not cold, I'm overwhelmed. I cannot handle this crap. Okay? So it's bad combination. Now you get the same sort of thing with any of these combinations. Validator wants to talk. Why do you yell all the time? Or why won't you talk to me? So you get that same sort of dynamic, less extreme than the other ones, but the same thing going on. Okay? Now here's an interesting tidbit. Who has the best sex throughout their marriage?
Probably volatile.
Volatile, okay? Makeup sex, right? I mean, come on. If there's nothing to make up over, okay?